Hello and a warm welcome to a very special podcast series, Unusual Suspects. I'm your host, Gaurav Choudhury. This is a series about unraveling stories of entrepreneurs, businessmen, investors, professionals, technologists, and philanthropists who are disruptors, yet not in your face. Their disruptions have consistently delivered on the purpose that they've embarked on. Their values are as strong as their mission. In each episode, I speak to one such leader, talking to her or him or them about the businesses, lives, inspirations, pivot moments and turning points, and of course, the little joys of life and work. Unusual Suspect streams on Earshot.in, Spotify.com, Google Podcasts, YouTube.com, moneycontrol.com, and a host of other streaming platforms and directories. For this episode, I'm delighted to have Ashish Nasa, MD and CEO, Universal Trustees. He's a seasoned finance professional with more than 2 decades of experience across banking, finance, wealth management, NRI advisory, cross-border structuring, and estate and succession planning. Universal Trustees is a leading Indian organization in the field of trusteeship and fiduciary services, known for its integrity, transparency, and client-centric services. Ashish leads the governance vision for setting up a new governance-driven, transparent, and institutionally reliable trusteeship services in India. Welcome to the show, Ashish. Delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much, Gaurav.
You know, Ashish, let's start off this conversation with something that is happening in India. And it's happening and how, and we see that, we continue to talk about it in a very, very proactive manner because the incidence is very high. This is about inheritance. We are probably in the biggest moment in Indian history where a lot of intergenerational wealth transfer is happening. You have a ringside view of this. You have a front row seat of what's happening because the kind of work that you're doing in this space. Do you think the transition is smooth, or do you think there are succession storms brewing here and there, which we do not see, but you have a view about?
As a country, we are going through a phase where a lot of developed countries have been some time before. It's a phase where the businesses are transitioning from one generation to another. It's a phase where the ownership and leadership will move on from one generation to another. If you look at this phase and compare it with the prior phase just 30 years ago, it's all started with liberalization, whereby a lot of Indian promoters and businesses created wealth due to 3 primary factors: entrepreneurship, risk-taking, and with the help of capital markets.
Right.
That was a phase in the life of promoters where they were busy making money and converting opportunities into success.
Right.
In such a phase when promoters are busy building wealth, rarely someone thinks of succession, because the entire focus of the promoters and people who are building businesses and professionals lies on converting opportunities into meaningful wealth.
Absolutely.
The question of succession comes in when there is a realization that the wealth will grow meaningfully beyond a certain point in time, only when the next generation is involved into it. And this is both an opportunity and a challenge. It's an opportunity if it gets right, then it's good for the family, it's good for the long-term success and sustainability of the business, and at a collective level, it's good for economy as well, because individual businesses collectively form an economy. This gets right provided the challenges are realized and accepted. The challenges are not only legal and financial, the challenges are also structural and emotional.
Right.
The new generation, the next generation that will join the business may have a different perspective about the business itself, may have a different definition of a risk-taking, or the different view about how should the business be grown.
Right.
And the question to your answer is that basis how those challenges are accepted and realized, an attempt is made to answer those questions, that decides whether succession is a storm in the building,
right,
or is it smooth. Wherever in the families we have seen that these challenges are realized and taken care and accounted for and given a reasonable flow to come out, they are reasonably well handled and succession becomes a smooth story.
Right.
As we often say, wealth kamana अपने आप में एक मुश्किल है, बट उसको संजो के नेक्स्ट जनरेशन तक पहुंचाना शायद उतना ही मुश्किल है.
Absolutely.
And needs to be done through.
Absolutely, very well said. And it's not just a binary, linear kind of a
Yes.
process or a relationship. There are multiplicity of factors at play. Not many of those, not all of those are tangible because there are emotions involved. There are different perspectives, different generations, and how each generation looks at how they think the wealth can be multiplied. That brings me to the next question, which is a very common thing that we are witnessing. It's a common aspect that we are witnessing in India now, not necessarily only limited to business families, but also individual families too, is the question of will. There is a common view in India that anecdotally people think that once the will is done, that is the end. However, in many cases that may not be the end. It is just one part of the process of succession transfer of wealth. Given your experience, because you have dealt with many complex structures, why is the will often just, do you think many say that it's a band-aid solution? Do you think it's a band-aid solution, and at what stage does a private trustee, family trustee come into play to take care of all of this?
Will is a very essential solution. It's a necessary part of estate planning. And the question is more to at what level the will is adequate and at what level there is a need for other structure comes in. What does will answer the question? The will answers the question very well, that how the assets will be distributed to the next generation. And this question, will is a very good instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But most business entrepreneurs and business families also want to answer the question as to what will happen to the control and management of the business.
Mm-hmm.
How would the continuity be preserved? And the underlying emotion is that the next generation which will take on should have a much better starting point. Because if you look at from a first generation entrepreneur perspective, there are a lot of difficulties, there are a lot of hard work going in earning this wealth. And every generation wants to make sure that the next generation has a much higher point so that they can launch on to a different ambitious journey from a different level altogether. Now, when it comes to answering the questions like how will the control of the business move on? How will the management be there? How would the spouses be taken care, the life partners be taken care? How would different beneficiaries would get benefit out of what has been earned in the first generation businesses? The answer is given by some of the structures you said, say a private trust, or I would say even a family charter. It does help in laying down the frameworks. So as far as will is concerned, it comes into the operation only when a person is no longer there. A will is operational after the demise, and it is a confidential document till then. Unlike that, a trust, which is a framework which answers some of the questions that I said, though that operates in the lifetime, which means family not only has an opportunity to go through, to understand, to operate the structure and the framework in the lifetime of the first generation, but to also ensure that the handover is smooth.
Right.
So if I were to sum it up and say in a line, will is good to distribute assets in the lifetime, and the trust is good to keep it together, lay it down together and set a framework and ensure that it moves on in a much clearer manner to the next generation. And depending on the kind of assets, maybe will is enough, or maybe you require a private family structures or even the family charters.
Absolutely. Ashish, one thing is that real estate remains one of the most valued asset classes so far as Indian families are concerned, even now, despite very deepening financialization that is taking place in the country. Now, so far as succession planning is concerned, and estate and succession planning is concerned, division of real estate often comes across as one of the most, these are fault lines that sometimes actually break families apart, particularly so when there are multi-city assets. In your experience, what is that one guardrail or a set of guardrails that you would recommend to families before it's too late?
So real estate, if you look at it, has a very special position in the Indian families. This is not only about business families, this is about even non-promoter families. The reason real estate is special because behind every real estate purchase, there is generally a story. And if you look back, say your lifetime and my lifetime and our earlier, the family home is rarely about a financial asset.
Yeah.
It also represents memories, it represents childhood spent together, festivals, the initial first relationships of lifetime spent together, and it's all about how it helps a culture in the family develop. Perhaps that's the reason the conversation around real estate needs to be far more deeper than just about it being a financial asset. And real estate is a asset where the relationships are formed. And let me take an example. If there is a family home and that has to go to the next generation family heirs, and there are multiple heirs, then the question is which family unit will take it? Will it be a common pool of asset? How will the emotions and the relationships will mend together? This is not only I would say, inheritance. This is more about solving the emotions related to it.
Right.
And questions around real estate has to possibly answer. And next generation, in fact, I found in many cases very vocal about it, where they look at as a clarity on this, not only for the sake of insecurity, but for the sake of having the relationships being built together. And I'll tell you, many family charters I've seen where one of the practice that the families ensure is that once in a year they will spend some minimum time in their family home, even if the families become global and some family units move out. And they say that it helps keep the family culturally together.
Right.
And real estate needs to be looked at from that perspective as well. Inheritance real estate, if looked at from this holistic perspective, generally leads to very smooth succession and ensures the family relationships are preserved.
You know, that's a very interesting point that you make about real estate, that it should not be seen just as an asset class, but with also deep layers of intangible elements like memories, etc. That brings me to the next question of fiduciary being the North Star. The word term fiduciary can get, and we can be tempted to use it as in a very clinical sense. But in the context of, if I may say so, sometimes very complex family disputes and transitions or complex corporate transitions, how do you ensure the role of a neutral gatekeeper, ensuring a smooth transition without the intent of the original founder's intent getting lost in translation?
The word fiduciary does sound technical and it does sound a bit cold, but in reality the fiduciary trusteeship plays a very crucial human oversight and continuity related role in the family. And if you look at the businesses, businesses evolve. The nature of businesses change, the direction of businesses change. When they expand, it requires multiple leaders, and the business ownership moves from one generation to another. The new generation comes with new perspectives, new definitions, and they have views from business appropriateness, suitability, right to the definition of risk taking being very, very different. Now, what a trusteeship does is to ensure that the overall larger framework of family ethics, framework of business ethics is adhered to, and that larger oversight role, the challenge of a trustee is to do it without being intervening into the family matters. A best trusteeship or a best trustee is an invisible trustee.
Right.
Is the one who is working in the background and the one who is ensuring that the larger structural sanity and the structural intent is kept, while ensuring that the participation in the family matters and the interfering with the family matters is minimum. A good trustee allows the perspectives to flow in, allows it to develop into something new, something different, while preserving the larger aspects of the framework which an initial founder laid down. And to that extent, a framework which lays down at a broader level makes the role relatively easy. So a role of a trusteeship is far more human, it's far more invisible in the background, ensuring that the larger intent of the structure is preserved without really participating in the family matters.
You know, Ashish, there's a definite visible shift that we are noticing in India now, so far as transition of wealth is concerned, is families and corporate structures are now moving decisively from individual to institutional, and that is more so, there is a strand of thoughts that said that is happening because, you know, there are new tech-driven wealth that is being getting created, and that is why all systems could possess various risks. All systems of transition and separation of wealth could possess risk, and that is why we are moving from individual ways of transitioning to more institutional ways of transitioning. Do you agree with that view?
I fully agree. In fact, we have ourselves in the last 2 decades and observed that shift. If you look at the businesses that were built earlier, they were built on relationships, they were built on founder-like instinct, they were built on handshake understanding, as you said, and there was little that was a written governance framework around it.
Right.
But as businesses grow, as they become larger, as the larger leaders get involved, family members get involved, some of the family units move abroad, some of them are part of a larger businesses, then it's very difficult to have a governance framework as a memory, which means there is a need for a family and even the business partners for that matter to note down and to put a written framework, primarily because there should not be any misunderstanding.
Right.
In fact, I've seen this participation from the next generation where the family units are multiple, where the promoters as well as the next generation members have together contributed to a framework. They have specifically felt the need to avoid any misunderstanding. Let's compare it with the phase that I said just now. Then they were initially built, they are built around entrepreneurs' instinct. Even then there is a framework. The unwritten framework is the person. The man himself is the framework. If there is a confusion, if there's an interpretation, everybody knows in the family who takes decisions, what happens, and whose decisions are ultimately followed. The moment the time comes for a handover or to grow a business where you need multiple partners, there becomes a need that all this becomes documented. As India is going through a silent phase where we are becoming more institutionalized and businesses are becoming bigger, this has become more natural for a written framework to evolve, and it is not necessarily primarily because of, say, trust deficit or something. It's a natural evolution of when the business becomes wider, geographically spread,
Right.
the need for a written framework comes in.
Absolutely, and it's a kind of a welcome move too, because we are moving now decisively from individual informal handshake agreements
Yes.
to an institutional setup. But that brings me to the next question, which is about shadow risks or soft risks, and this has got to do with emotional frictions. So how does universal trustee help trustees help families navigate those emotional risks, given the fact that the next gen of the family could be actually looking at a very different direction of creating more wealth or multiplying wealth, very different from the direction that the original founder probably could not have imagined.
So you'll in fact be surprised, Gaurav, that this risk is not soft or unseen. The promoter and the founder generation knows this risk, considers it as significant risk, and want to actively plan for it. And I'll just go back to saying what could be the reason before I come to next generation handover.
Right.
What is there in the most founder generations that we have felt across in our conversation? The founder generation built business with years of sacrifice. They have taken a lot of hard work, personal family time being spent, a lot of multiple failures have gone in, and in fact the resultant success that came may not be the business or the venture that they initially planned. It could be very different, and this generation very much understands that the new direction of business, they know that the new wealth might come from a different direction, what they look at mostly is to preserve what they have done so that the new generation gets a substantial higher starting point. For them, the new direction is mostly welcome because they have gone through this cycle themselves and they know that new direction could give them far more success than what is being initially planned or done by them in their lifetime. But what they want to lay down a framework for is in a manner that existing success that built after multiple failure and sacrifice, it's continued, is preserved in the family, and the concentration risk that happens maybe when the next generation just immediately takes over, those risks are avoided. What I'm trying to say here is that the old generation welcomes the new direction at the preservation and continuity of what they have built, and most of the structures are around ensuring that the next generation, when maturely has taken it over fully from them, then they take the decisions about each and every element of the business. And that's the founding emotions that I've found in many places.
You know, Ashish, you work with a lot of HNIs, both within and outside India, and also a lot of institutional investors. Let's draw a parallel from the world of corporate governance. What is that one lesson from the world of high stakes trusteeship that Indian families should take to ensure minimum disruption in transition and kind of future-proof it?
So, if you look at large institutions today, some of them were actually a promoter-led regular family businesses in the past. In few cases, it became successful primarily because the business grew larger than the founder himself. And at the formative years of a business, when the entrepreneur-led instincts, relationships, immediate execution leads to large amount of growth of business. As business grows, as it grows geographically and spreads, there is a need for more leaders to get involved. And as more leaders get involved, the wider decision making takes over. This means that if a founder is able to create a business line which is independent of any one individual, including the founder himself, that's one lesson which converts or possibly could convert a business into a large scale enterprise.
Right.
And what we have witnessed is that irrespective of how extraordinary a founder is, at some scale, the nature of the business and scalability itself requires an independent business line operations working as per a framework rather than a leader leading it individually, and it depends on that individual. This is one big largest lesson that I would say that we have seen from people who have become successful and converted large scale enterprise when they have been able to create a system which is not dependent on one individual, and the process and the framework itself takes over and ensures that a business line or multiple business lines operate without any individual being crucial to its existence.
You know, Ashish, we are now entering the high noon of rapid digital disruption, of course, enabled and accelerated by artificial intelligence. So there is an agentic, quote unquote, agentic workflow that is also set into the kind of work that we are doing. How is the role of trusteeship evolving, particularly given the fact that, you know, do you think that fiduciary oversight is now more than just a function of audit and should actually be about real-time governance? Do you think that time has now come?
The way technology has integrated into every aspect of our lives, be it individual who is anywhere across, as a person who is involved into any industry, it's very natural for a person to think about how technology can probably automate things, how can it make things more responsive, and how can the whole system can be automated to the largest extent. If you think from a fiduciary and trusteeship business perspective, there are various elements into this. The elements are operational, the elements are around customer communication, responsiveness, and it's around workflows. And then there are other human aspects, which is about trust, which is about ensuring empathy, understanding the family sentiment. Those are the human aspect. From a technology perspective, there is always an attempt, and the attempt has been made in fiduciary and trusteeship as well, to try and digitize as much as possible for the sake of efficiency, for the sake of operational responsiveness, for the sake of productivity, keeping the human elements intact, because fiduciary and trusteeship as a business is primarily led human in nature more, because the other aspects that I spoke about, the trust, the family empathy, the relationship understanding, that counts more. But technology is used as a lever to improve the scale, the operations, and to make the whole thing more productive and more scalable. To that extent, yes, technology is being adopted almost every year, including the exploration around artificial intelligence being adopted for the purpose of improving operations, for the purpose of becoming more responsive, reporting requirements, to ensure that things which could be done possibly once in a month, if required, are done once in a week or once every day. That's what technology can do.
Absolutely.
At the same time, preserving crucial human aspects intact. And that's the challenge of integrating technology, which I personally feel is pretty much in every business. If you look at any business, this is exactly the challenge or the opportunity they are feeling around the technology.
You know, Ashish, you also make the complex world or the opaque world of financial services accessible to a large number of people that you work, you're giving services to. Let me ask you a hypothetical question. If you come across a next-gen person from a wealthy family who has just hit a massive liquidity event, and what is the day zero conversation you're going to have with him?
Very honestly, I think the day zero is not about business, is not about structures. It's about understanding the change in perspective that might have happened. This liquidity event, if it's a day zero, is something that represents years or decades of hard work, sacrifices made by the founder generation. I'm assuming the first generation liquidity event. And if a founder, after so much of hard work, so much of time given, has sacrificed so much to build up to this liquidity event, along with him, the family has sacrificed too silently.
Right.
The countless moments when the family members were probably discussing the enterprise, even on the dinner table, and everything at the home was about enterprise. There was no work-life balance, and years have passed by. Your prime has gone through discussing that, and all that has converted into a liquidity event today. It's not a moment for immediately structuring or thinking down and planning the framework. It's a moment of reflection.
Right.
The reflection is more to do about what does wealth mean now? The entire success, the hard work was for this moment, and the moment has come. What do you think the next journey of life will use it for? There are some sacrifices that a relationship time level are made to get to this point. How does it now make sure that those relationships are served and the continuity is preserved? And once you have answer to these larger questions, the structure falls in place automatically. Then you just set on the priorities and just understand where the next level is. It just becomes an easy framework to set.
Absolutely. And Ashish, final question. You have I started this conversation by describing how you have a ringside and a front view and a front row seat about wealthy people trying to divide their wealth, and you have dealt with many wealthy people and trying to help them navigate their wealth transition and separation of wealth among generations, has it changed your view about what wealthy means?
One of the side effects of this business is that the profession changes one's perspective.
Right.
And the discussion day in and day out around wealth accumulated, it's very difficult not to let it reflect on your own to an extent. And what I have personally realized is that the wealth has many layers. The first layer of wealth is about abundance, success, sometimes a feeling of pride. And in the case of founder first generation, it comes with genuine appreciation for sacrifices, for entrepreneurial courage, and for the hard work and discipline that has gone in while building it. Then the next layer is, in my view, continuity and preservance. The moment the thought comes in that the wealth has been accumulated to a certain extent, then the question of involving the next generation and preserving it for the next generation comes in.
Right.
That's the second layer. The third layer is more around the relationship themselves. While earning this, a lot of family time went in, a lot of work-life balance was thrown out of gear. And typically the realization comes in with age and experience that it was eventually meant for the relationships, and how does it help back the relationships again? And once this realization is done and everything is thought through, then lastly, in my view, where it's done successfully, I've seen as a peace of mind.
Right.
The last layer is about feeling satisfied that whatever the hard work and the efforts were done, at times little too much of an effort put in at the cost of relationships, time. And eventually it threads back, eventually it's ensured the preservation is done, there is a harmony in the family, and that leads to the last layer of peace of mind. And if you look back, this is what typical, not only a wealthy life, it's about everyone's family.
Absolutely.
And in case of a wealthy life, it's just little more of intense on one side at any point in time. Otherwise, it reflects back about what any Indian family would be.
Absolutely. Very well said, Ashish. And thank you so much for taking the time out and dropping by to have this conversation with us and sharing your deep insights and perspectives on a range of issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you.